market review where we give you developments and updates on the financial and capital market as it affects the economy. Today on Thursday, we look at the commodities market and we will be discussing around the AFEX and the recently launched Agricultural Food Jobs Plan and how it intends to drive food security in Nigeria. With me to lead this conversation is Mr. Hemense Orkah. He's the Vice President Commercial for AFEX Commodities Exchange. And good morning and nice to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Yes. First, let's begin with the activities of the AFEX exchange in the second half of the year. Remember, we had a conversation in the first half of the year, and at that point, it was the peak of the pandemic. The lockdown was fully effective, and it really had impact on agro activities. But now we're in the second half of the year already. Has the easing of the lockdown boosted agro activities and helped your activities in the commodities market?
It definitely has, but it's been taking place in the midst of a very tight environment. So let's just set the stage a little bit by saying, Q2 we saw contraction in the economy about 6%. And we're likely going to see more contraction in Q3 as well, which will put us officially into a depression. We expect that to happen. We see inflation rates rising, close to 3%, 30% unemployment. So everything has been happening in quite a tumultuous environment. Unfortunately, it's been an inverse relationship with commodities. So we've seen soybean has stayed flat, but we've seen like over a 70% increase in the price of paddy rice and maize. Paddy rice especially peaked at well over 200,000 naira per ton, which is quite unprecedented. But while commodity prices have risen, there's still a bit of a hangover from the effects of the lockdown. Right? So it's been tougher and harder to meet our farmers' demands for inputs, and we've had to disperse a lot longer than we usually would have liked to. We've also done a bit of re-strategizing. So where we couldn't give them, or farmers that weren't able to get the hand of the full bundle, we've been able to give them other products like urea, which could be used for the second or third application. So there's been a lot of adjusting and adaptability on our side as well.
A lot of adjustments, and in terms of the farmers, they also have to really adjust with that. But in terms of that synergy between the Agric Ministry and even the security officials and the Ministry of Trading, ensuring that there's an ease of movement of goods and products across the country, would you say that has been effective in helping also the farm produce getting to town?
For sure, right? So it's imperative to help us reach the last mile farmer. So it's one thing for goods and produce to move from the factory, get into our warehouses, and another thing to take it a step further and actually reach the farm gate where the farmer can actually use it. So it's definitely easy. We're running into a couple hindrances in terms of mixed policies from state to state, which has affected movement. So in some states right now, trucks aren't allowed to move from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and can only move in the evening. All those are proving to be hindrances, but it's definitely assisted and loosened up a bit for us.
Yeah. At least there's a need for more interaction and more engagement to improve that across the country, because that was a major concern for the entire agro value chain, the fact that there were some hindrances, and nice that the Minister, Laji Sabunanono of Agriculture, engaged stakeholders, and we hope to see more of that easing of movement this period. But let's get to the recent activity that the AFEX exchange was involved in. You participated actively at the launch of the Agricultural Food and Jobs Plan of the federal government. That was in Katsina. Now, first tell us, how will the AFJP mitigate the impact of the pandemic on local food production in Nigeria at this time?
Sure. Yeah. No. So AFJP is quite an ambitious program, right? Any program that is intending to reach 2.4 million farmers, anyone that's on the field will tell you that that's not the easy thing to do. So the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, the Vice President's office, has decided to partner with local organizations on the ground in an effort to reach these farmers. So they'll be providing zero interest loans to farmers to help facilitate production on their farmland. So whether that's through inputs in kind or even donating food as well. It's all wrapped up into this program. So the effect we hope to see is that individuals around the country will have greater access to food come harvest. They also mentioned there's a little bit of an economic angle to this as well. Any production that's being done on the farmland will increase the number of people finding work and availability of jobs. So this was going to have boost on the economy as well.
So that's in terms of the ambitious plan. When we look at the data, like you said, 2.4 million farmers feeding 100 million households and even producing 10 million metric tons. For this to be feasible, the infrastructure and the entire value chain needs to be aligned. Is this the case at the moment? What needs to be done more to really make this feasible? Don't forget, Hemense, in terms of history, we've had various initiatives like this. We've had the Green Revolution, we had Operation Feed the Nation. So this again is another interesting initiative. But do we have the infrastructure framework? Do we have the value chain all aligning together?
Sure. So I would say that it's still a work in progress, right? But it's definitely important to start somewhere and tweak and adjust along the way. Hopefully, we take key learnings from this initiative and sort of apply it continuously in other programs that then come after this. So all key stakeholders need to be aligned from the top management all the way down to the smallholder farmer. I think timing is key. Production needs to be boosted. Processing also needs support. Distribution networks need to be streamlined. But so all that is still a work in progress. But I have to say that I do admire the government being responsive. So it's one thing to see a pandemic happen and not try and pull for any solutions and just say it's greater than we can control. Or it's another thing to say, okay, we're going to step in and try and intervene and keep on working on our response strategy.
And looking at that is a very, very low initiative. But what about the buy-in for the financial market? Because I know that AFEX also has been looking at how to create that opportunity for farmers to access credit or be able to scale their production, because naturally it has always been a challenge for the financial market to key into the agro space. Though the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing several things to encourage the financial market to also invest more in the agro sector. Stakeholders, those who have been in the banking system now having their farms, feel that we should have Agric desk, which I believe several have. We even have the agriculture bank, which wants to be recapitalized. In terms of the financial aspect, financial market composition to improve initiatives like this, are you seeing more synergy in that regard between the financial market players and the agro sector players, which the AFEX also is coming into to support?
Agreed. No, there definitely is more synergy, and as you sort of hinted, that's been a true mission for us, right? Is how can we align those two partners closer together, because that's going to lead to greater agricultural boost for the entire country. And maybe unfortunately or fortunately for us, because of what's happening on the macro level, treasury bills going down, financial houses are looking for other instruments in which to invest their funds in. And so agriculture is showing up as a viable alternative asset class in which they can put money in. The biggest hindrance has always been identity, right? So they see farmers as a huge risk because they don't know who they are and what their repayment terms are going to look like, or rates are going to look like. And that's where we think we can come in. So trying to digitize the sector, we can provide that visibility to them and give them transparency and also the comfort to say that they can invest with us and get good returns. So it's been a boon for us. We've launched several products in this space that come in and invest in agriculture.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's something laudable in terms of AFEX, what you're doing to try to address that. But in perspective, if you were to have the opportunity to advise more, recapitalizing the Nigerian Agric bank, how would you like them to operate more in this period, particularly to help boost an initiative like the AFJP?
Right. So it's about being an anchor and being that anchoring force, right? So let's remove any sort of patronage or any sort of relationship driven service, and build this on data and transparency, right? So how can they track and collate data as to what is viable in the area, how many farmers, what the true needs are, spread that across the board, and then look at what industries are going to be successful and build anchors in those specific industries. I think that's going to go a long way.
I mean, indeed, even the monetary policy, the rates also, like what we saw in the COVID intervention, 50 billion intervention for the SMEs, entrepreneurs, domiciled in the NISAL Microfinance Bank, reducing the interest rate from 9 to 4%. Definitely, for such initiative, there should be provision to look at the rates that producers in the industry would have. I mean, looking at that rates. But do you know of more activities for the agripreneurs through that initiative of the central bank, agripreneurs having access to this funds? I mean, I know that AFEX is also helping in helping farmers. Those are agripreneurs too in this regard.
Yeah, so I mean, so informally, I'm hearing a lot of chatter from friends of friends that are being able to access capital funds. So I think what this environment or the impact of Corona has done has just shown the importance of agriculture, and now we're finally able to see individuals being able to benefit from loans that they previously didn't have access to. And I think there is some pressure from the federal government as well to encourage banks to loan and open up their books to agro entrepreneurs to come and crowd into the space. So I think there are a lot of interesting things happening, and people are finding access to funds that they previously weren't able to.
And I just wanted to ask you, Hemense, because I know that AFEX is playing a big role. You have partners like Agro and others that are working to see how they can improve, especially agri extension. This current minister said part of his focus will be improving agri extension services. And I mean, for us who grew up in homes where our parents were involved in agroeconomics, we knew how important in the 70s and 80s agri-extension services were, but today it's not really that effective. How are you and your partners working in that regard, supporting these agri-extension services, even as the Ministry of Agri is now taking that seriously, because it will help the quality of production for the farmers?
For sure. So look, I started by saying that this is a long-term thing and not a change that's going to happen overnight. So farmers are very vested in the way things are being done. You know, it's a tradition that's usually passed on from generation to the next. And to get them to change, especially when there's not a lot of money, there's a scarcity of resources involved, and you can't really experiment, it becomes challenging. But the way our structure is set up, we do have field agents that are on the ground. We recently converted them from just plain field agents to actually provide extension services to the farmers. So they do everything from best agronomic practices, training, to delivering and helping them strategize on the farmland. And we know it's going to take time. You know, through the help of Agro that you mentioned, we've set up demo plots in the field, and farmers are crowding around that to see what is actually happening and seeing how we can help them through best practices boost their output and the yield. But like I keep on coming back to, it's not an easy thing. It's going to take time. It's a long-term play for us.
Yeah, long-term strategy. I mean, I agree with you on that. But it's happy to know that you are partnering in that area, because that was one major area identified, and we're happy that the current administration is committing to improve that area. We hope that they will match words with action to improve the practices of our farmers, which will also boost production in the country. But let's look at the second quarter 2020, which you mentioned earlier, the reports of the Nigerian GDP, gross domestic product. It showed a decline, particularly in the activities of the transportation and storage sector. This is vital for the development of agro and commodities value chain. So I wanted to ask you, because we have this incidence of post-harvest losses because of this whole challenge of transportation and storage. So huge chunk of products from the farms are wasted at the end because of the low investments in transportation and storage. So I want to ask you, what are the creative ways that we can open up channels for private equity companies? I had a conversation this week, and we're hearing that agribusiness is one place that private equity firms, venture capital companies, and firms can invest in. So what are those creative ways to encourage and to incentivize them to invest in these areas to address the issues of post-harvest losses?
Sure. So, I mean, I would say in a nutshell, it's showing them the opportunity that's at their fingertips that they need to take advantage of. So, transportation is a vital issue, right? Whether it's taking crops from the farm gate to the market or taking it from the farm gate to storage, they always need to move at the end of the day. So, how do we transport goods in a way that is that's going to be helpful to apologies.
Mm. Very, very important. I mean, ensuring that we can get this across board, the infrastructures to connect very well.
Yeah, sorry, apologies for that.
No problem. Yeah, you can go on.
So I think it's definitely an important sector, and in a way that there are lots of rewards that could be garnered from investing in this. I think some interesting use cases that I recently heard of. Somebody stopped in the office the other day, and they were trying to create an Uber service for trucks and haulage services, right?
Mm.
I think that's an interesting way that people and private investors can come in and piggyback on that. There's also a couple of cold storage companies that are cropping up as well. I think on a larger scale, maybe macro level, there are other means of transportation that are underinvested or uninvested in. So I'm thinking like waterways, for instance. That's an area that could be explored, and then even on the rail networks too.
Yes.
I know there's obviously a lot of opportunity in that sector. So it would mean like getting through a lot of government bureaucracy and red tape, but if you're able to overcome that challenge, it's definitely going to prove to be rewarding.
Yes, I mean, the waterways is one very major area we can leverage, particularly when we see what's happening in Lagos and across the country. The National Inland Waterways Agency can do a lot there. That's NIWA. But also we're seeing some projects from the federal government, the rail connection across the country. Definitely the agro space can tap into that when it's fully operational. It can also help to move agro products across. But let's look at some level of engagement in terms of legislations that can help improve the commodities market. The warehousing bill, what's engagement like, and are we seeing prospects of that coming to fruition quickly to enable your activities, particularly at the AFEX exchange?
Yeah, so we know that the need is there. And industries like AFEX are able to provide the technology that's going to help that sector be fruitful. And I'm talking about warehouse receipting and being able to be accountable for the goods that are in store. We're also coming up with different products right now, asset-backed commercial paper that's going to leverage that technology and that knowledge.
Yes, you talked about asset-backed commercial paper, so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be fantastic, right? So it's going to help both demand and supply, in which processors are going to have the capacity to buy earlier in the season and at good prices, as well as production on the production side. Farmers are able to get a valuable reward for the price of the commodities as well. So I think both of those will go hand in hand. But the need for storage services is there, and I think it's becoming a reality. I do think we have the infrastructure. It's about leveraging it and tapping it and bringing it into a more structured ecosystem.
From developed markets, from your own experience, exposure and working experience even overseas, how is this done effectively in terms of synergizing the whole ecosystem to work effectively, from investment in transportation and storage down to the infrastructure required, and then bringing on board the financial space?
Sure. So I think broadly speaking, government can be very involved, but involved loosely. So involved to set the groundwork, the blueprint, set the policy in which can drive then the private sector, or allow the private sector to come in and drive the establishment of all this. And it's about playing that gatekeeper role and showing people and being like the first mover in the space and showing people there is a viable economic options here and opportunity here. How do you come in and take advantage of it?
So you agree with the notion that we should have a more private sector driven approach to the agro sector? I mean, I talked with one of the senior men in the agribusiness space, vice chairman of Nigerian Agribusiness Group. You know him, Mr. Jerry. He said we need to have a more private sector driven approach to the agro sector. Do you agree with that?
Hands down, right? So it's about matching, it's about aligning incentives in the sector. So unfortunately, a lot of times, like with government intervention, they may not always align incentives depending on who's at the helm at that moment. But with private sector, we know that if we don't hunt, we won't eat, and so therefore it's going.
Mr. Hemense, can you hear me? Well, we had some slight connectivity challenge. Well, it has been an interesting conversation with Mr. Hemense Orkah, Vice President Commercial for AFEX Commodities Exchange. It's been discussing extensively around the market, the activities in the agro sector, the challenges that the farmers have been facing, and how
AFEX has been playing a role of helping to support the activities, and also the recently launched Agricultural Food Jobs Plan and how it intends to support food security in the country amidst the impact of the pandemic. Apart from that, so far there has been a lot of engagements that AFJP has a very good opportunity to feed a record 100 million households in the country. So let's get back to Mr. Hemense. Mr. Hemense, can you hear me now? Mr. Hemense, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, no problem. So you were talking about the synergy based on your experience, exposure overseas, how it is done. If you can just ramp up on that aspect. Okay, still having challenges listening or hearing you. It's breaking. Okay. Okay.
Those sectors as well. So just quickly, I'd say it has to be private sector led, but with government support and government incentives.
Okay, so private sector led, but with government support and incentives and initiatives. Well, now let's look at your innovative platform, the COMEX. It's amongst others the improving the trading on commodities amidst the disruptive impact of the pandemic. How has it been helping this period in terms of trading on commodities? Is it providing that ease of trade, and are people really engaging it as much as expected?
Yeah, COMEX is growing. I think it's a great application, it's a great technology. It's growing the market, it's allowing more people to participate in agriculture who previously weren't able to. So before COMEX, if you wanted to buy a grain of maize and store, you may have to travel all the way up north to your village, work with a farmer, find some sort of shed or shanty to stock the goods in there. Who knows whether they get infested, rained on, and then wait for the next 6 months and sell at peak. All this you're now able to do digitally from the comfort of your home anywhere in the world. And so I think what we're seeing is that more people are becoming involved. People were able to see this season what happened in the commodity space. We were able to see the price appreciation for the different commodities that we listed. And so I hear feedback from some people that they weren't prepared this year to invest. But after seeing what has happened historically, they're definitely going to try and get involved this upcoming season. And I think all that, to the digital nature and availability of platforms like COMEX.
Yes. And in terms of the fact that most of them are in the rural areas, are there provisions like apps or so? Are there ways beyond even if apps that they can use the like USSD service, those farmers who may not be really, really exposed to carry out trade just for their products?
Right. So the physical exchange is there.
Okay.
So those farmers that aren't on the tech or aren't technically inclined, the same product is available in the warehouses. They can actually bring it there to sell or buy directly from our warehouses. So that physical nature is there. COMEX is for the digitally inclined, and so that way, that's opening up a wider space. Farmers themselves, if they do desire, can open up an account and trade. And this is just the first iteration of the platform. There's a lot more that's going to be coming to be able to give farmers access to even trade directly with the buyer. And so a lot of growth in this space too. So this is not the end. It's just the beginning.
Just the beginning. And let's get your closing thoughts on the commodities market in Nigeria and the agro space. What are your closing thoughts? What would you like to see happen more? What are your projections too?
Sure. So I think the one thing that Corona has taught us is the importance of this space. And so what I like to see and what I've been seeing is more crowding that is taking place. And more players coming in, more stakeholders, more beneficiaries. And I think that's good, that's important. People have been able to see the growth and the importance of the sector. And I project that to continue. So I think personally, I expect prices to remain high going into the next season, with more people crowding into the space, and not being able to dip until perhaps after Christmas or going on to the new year. But I think it's good. I think it's a good realization, and it's going to be rewarding for the farmers. And I just hope that the space continues to grow, and government policies align with what is actually taking place on the ground.
Okay, so policy alignment is very important to ensure that the commodities markets continue to experience a boost in the country. Is that right?
Correct. No, it's vital important, right? So it's not just about blanket statements or blanket policies. It really have to be pinpoint towards different initiatives to bring out the correct desired effect. And one government agency can't have a different policy from the others, because they all have to be aligned.
Okay, all right. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Hemense Orkah. It was really nice having you discuss around the
AFEX activities, the AFJP, that's the Agricultural Food Jobs Plan, and prospects for food security in Nigeria. So indeed, we hope that with policy alignment, like you said, in the agro space, we will see more activities occur for the commodities exchange, and indeed impact positively for farmers and other stakeholders in the agro space. And we hope to have you to discuss further on these developments in the commodities market. Thank you very much once again for the time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the spotlight.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So that'll be all for this edition of the Market Review. You can send your comments and even questions if you have any to news@proshareng.com. Also, the Commodities Exchange is covered on the ProShare platform. We have a special page in terms of our index coverages of that space. So just log on to www.proshareng.com and put commodities search bar. You would see that activity covering even the AFEX Commodities Exchange and what they're doing, and other news stories that you may want on the commodities market. Every Thursday we're here to discuss around that market. It's very important, it's critical, and it keys into the agro sector and our quest for food security and industrialization and economic growth. So that'll be all for Thursday, September 3rd, 2020 edition of the Market Review. Please, to all our investors and of course the public, don't forget that in this period of uncertainties, there are platforms out there working around the clock to also rip off Nigerians of their savings and hard-earned money. Please, any platform that's not registered or regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission is a no-no for you. Avoid them so that you can keep your investments and put them in where you can see drive value, because there's no 100 and 200% returns I can get quickly like that if it is effectively regulated and registered. Till we come your way again, let's make it happen tomorrow, 10 a.m. same time. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.